大家好.
Oh,
Good morning. It's my honor and true privilege to be here today. I will be talking about the first modern ophthalmologist in Korea, which is relatively recent compared to neighbors. So, he was born in Pyeongdong, on the northern part of Korea, near Dandong. Actually, it's pretty close to China border, across the river. He was born as a twin, a premature baby. In the wintertime, his mother had to deliver two babies outside home. It just happened in a hurry. The brother, he was born as two brothers, twins. And Dr. Hong Do-ho, his brother died at birth, so he's the one who survived. I think that may have something to do with his life. He was born in an old traditional home, and his father was a grain dealer. Amazingly, in those days, we have to go back, this is not 2015, this was somewhere around 2026. At that time, you can study on your own and pass 3-part test. He had a very short training in Pyongyang. And then he took tests every year, 3 years in a row, he had to pass 3 parts. And he passed all 3. At age 20, he was born in 1906, so age 20, he became a young doctor licensed to practice. At that time, of course, there's no specialty, so he could practice anything in medicine. That was a license. 12 years later, he knocked on the door of now Seoul National University, but it was under Japanese occupation. So he knocked on the door of a lab, anatomy lab in fact, and volunteered as a lab technician without getting paid. So he lived in a very inexpensive place. And he did research on retina, and he did a fine job determining how come we have central serous retinopathy. His concept is still valid, that when blood has some toxic material, such as jaundice, you have central retina, which is very sensitive. If you shine bright light to a very jaundiced person, he'll have central serous retinopathy. So he wrote a research paper, and his professor was so impressed with Dr. Kong's industry and hard work. So his professor's school was Nagoya University, and that's where he had Doctor of Medicine degree without going to the classes. In 1936, that's what it was. You submit worthwhile research paper and they grant. And he was one of few who had Doctor of Medicine degree from Nagoya University. Now, 1938, 2 years after he got doctorate, he opened the very first Kong Eye Clinic in Korea. This is the very first eye clinic in the state. This is Dr. Kong. He's a man of many talent. As 1945, the World War II ended, so Korea became independent country. not part of Japan. So 1945, he wrote textbook in Japanese, and he had to translate into Korean textbook so that Koreans can read it. And he realized that how come Americans have typewriters and Koreans don't have typewriters? So he got so excited, he did more typewriter development research. There were 2 other models ahead of his model, but his model is much faster. So this is the U.S. patent, actually. He got U.S. patent of this typewriter. So he wanted to do research in typewriter. So he came to the United States and worked for Underwood. Actually, Underwood family has some missionaries in Korea. They're related to Yonsei University. And through that connection, he worked for Underwood developing Korean typewriter. Korean War ended in 1953. That happens to be my birthday, actually. That's a good gift. The war ended, and the agreement paper, armistice, stop firing, was typed with his typewriter. And that typewriter was taken to North Korea during the Korean War. Korean War was 50 to 53, 3 years. And this was typed at 53. So North Koreans took Dr. Kong's typewriter to North Korea, and they typed the agreement using this typewriter. So this is Kong typewriter. You will recognize this is Kim Il-sung, and Mark Clark is American general. So that is agreement paper of normal war. Not only did he get ophthalmology, he wanted to help people in the rural areas. So he was a man of Renaissance. So he bought ambulance. He would go out to the remote areas to help out. He also felt so bad about people that were blind, so he trained. By the way, he brought white cane from America because he was so surprised to see there are Americans who hold a job although they're blind and they can walk around. So he trained blind people how to walk. This is a training session for blind. So this is a blind people rehabilitation center he built. At age 72, he got interested in photography. This is an amazing man. So this is his photography. It's one of the pictures he had taken. And this is another one. And he won national competition in a photo contest. National competition was displayed at a national exhibit. He was honored with many medals. At advanced age, to the last few years of his life, he was still active. This is Mr. Huang and Dr. Kong, who worked on Mac, Apple computer font in Korea. He worked on font the last few years of his life. It's an amazing human being. He donated his body after his will was very simple. He didn't talk about money. He talked about his body. He wanted to have his body donated to medical school. And this is his cornea, now 109 years old. It's still working. This is Dr. Hong's cornea. And the patient is expected to live another 30 years. So this cornea may last to 140 years total. So he's an amazing man. Not only that, his body was donated, and he asked the anatomy lab to make a skeleton specimen, and he's displayed as an anatomy class at Yonsei University. That came from his time at Columbia. He always went through the back door because he didn't have any qualifications, he didn't have any, anything to show. So he hangs around and can I help this and that. Eventually, they let him work in the anatomy lab, not the ophthalmology. So at Columbia, he was working in the anatomy lab. He worked on lacrimal duct and did a lot of dissections. One day, his professor in anatomy was carrying some skulls, and he said, "Do you know who this is?" He said, "Of course he doesn't know. It's a skeleton." That's my professor at Columbia. Now, skeleton specimen at Columbia, probably still there, was an anatomy professor who donated his body and made skeletons. So this is my professor. So he did the same. That's where I think he got the idea. So Dr. Kong Byung-woo is a very remarkable man. I would say human being par excellence. He used time very efficiently. He said to his children, time is not gold, time is life. So 1 hour spent, 1 hour gone. So time is not gold. Don't worry about gold, but life. So that's what he taught his children. Very amazing man. He was a physician, the real human, very humane person, I would say. First ophthalmologist in Korea. He taught himself, but became very first ophthalmologist. He's the inventor and developer of typewriters. It's still used. And then I would say this is so important. He's a humanitarian. He rehabilitated blind people. So I cannot respect him more. Kong Eye Clinic is still in active practice in Seoul. They have 3 different centers. This is Dr. Kong Yong-tae. He provided much of the material. I'm most grateful to him. He's the son of Dr. Kong. It's a remarkable family. He comes to AAO every year. So I'm grateful to Dr. Kong for providing much of the material. Another person I want to thank is my staff who prepared this PowerPoint. With other people helping, we get there together. So, student of the program. Shay Shay, thank you so much for listening to me. This was a true honor for me.
Thank you, John, for the present. 今天上午我们的就到这里了。赵教授，你要做一个介绍，你要做。